we're going to be spreading out the top eight just a little bit. Our first set of quarterfinal matches will be two matches going, and then we'll have a quarterfinal two that'll start in about an hour after that. We will do each of the semifinals separately, so we'll be able to bring you as much awesome Lorcana content as we possibly can. We're going to go over our first two quarterfinal matchups here. The one that we'll be starting off with is going to be the former Magic World Champion Nathan Steuer, who started 3-0 yesterday with Ruby Amethyst Control. Let's go ahead and take a look at his deck list, and we'll talk a little bit about it. So this build, obviously, a bit different than what we're used to, thanks to the 3 copies of White Rabbit's Pocket Watch. He gets a little aggressive sometimes with Archimedes. We watched him actually punish one of the Sapphire Ember decks yesterday by actually questing early, which Ruby Amethyst doesn't do that well.
Right, and I think that particular game, Nathan just got a good read on the draw he had and decided his opponent might not be very prepared for such an aggressive start.
Mm-hmm.
But with only 2 Archimedes, I'm not totally sure we'll see that happen very often.
Yeah, for sure. His opponent is going to be one of the members of the Magic Hall of Fame, Frank Karsten, playing Amber Steel Stitch Blitz. This is an aggressive strategy built around the early drops like Lilo, Making a Wish, and Stitch New Dog, utilizing Bodyguard with Simba Protective Cub. And the top end features Ariel Spectacular Singer, which can sing either Grab Your Sword or Whole New World, and then Stitch Rockstar, which is an awesome draw engine alongside Stitch New Dog.
Yeah, like you said, this is an aggressive build. Frank is a big fan of aggro decks, and he's going to be looking to get under those Be Prepareds from Nathan.
All right. So we do have a second quarterfinal match that is happening simultaneously to this one. That's going to be fellow Lost Boy Harlan Fear playing an Amber and Sapphire list that 3 copies were into the top 8. And he's going to be playing against one of our last chance qualifiers in Kurt Spies. That is going to be off camera, though, and we will get to that match if we have time. But the players in the feature match area are ready to go, and we are ready to go as well. So let's head on down there and watch these 2 players battle it out. On your left, Frank Karsten, Hall of Famer for Magic the Gathering. On your right, Nathan Steuer. The records shouldn't be that, but it's okay. Steuer was 3-0 yesterday. We'll just take the records off. It's fine. Steuer's Ruby Amethyst deck doesn't often play 1-drop, so it will deploy those Archimedes and things in order to be defensive against, those Lilo Making Wishes and early drops.
Yeah, and I talked to Nathan about his preparation for this event. He said he worked with Luna, Isan actually, who's been a
Hearthstone Grandmaster.
Hearthstone Grandmaster, and who's been a prominent player in the Lorcana community so far, particularly with Ruby Amethyst. So they work together on a deck list. Luna is playing that same build along with a couple other players in some tournaments this weekend as well. And they decided to trim all the way down to those 2 copies of Archimedes because they expect more of a mid-range meta.
All right, well, turn 2, Magic Broom from Nathan Steuer. This 2-cost Amethyst character. Not really for this matchup specifically, more geared towards, those longer games where you want to shuffle cards back into your deck. But Nathan here deploying it early so he could defend against a potential turn 2 character. Frank Karsten plays Simba Protective Cub and plays it untapped.
Yeah, Simba maybe not at his absolute best without a turn 1 character to protect, but as we start to see this game develop, Simba's definitely going to stay relevant on the board. Once Frank gets some good questing characters down, Simba's going to require either a bigger answer from Nathan's hand or a 2-for-1 on the board.
Yep. The 3 willpower on Simba Protective Cub makes it one of the best cards in the aggressive strategies. We'll get Simba Protective Cub on screen, talk about it a little bit. This 2-cost 2/3 is inkable. It is the only 2-drop character that does have the Bodyguard ability so far, so it makes it ideal for pairing it with 1-cost characters like Lilo Making a Wish that can quest for high amounts but can't protect themselves very well, or Rumble in combat. Frank here does find a Grab Your Sword off of the Ariel Spectacular Singer, which threatens to completely destroy Nathan's board position with these 2 characters in play with only 2 willpower.
Yeah, Grab Your Sword, typically in card games you'll see board wipes like, Pyroclasm in Magic, Twisting Nether in Hearthstone, not necessarily be good against control strategies, but there are 2 keys with Grab Your Sword. One, it's one-sided, and second, every deck in Lorcana has to play early characters to contest the board. So grab your sword, particularly if you can play it for cheap by singing it with Ariel, can be a great way to get back some tempo and neutralize even a control deck's early game.
All right, so Steuer deploys Mickey Mouse. This Wayward Sorcerer can return the brooms to hand if they can challenge in combat and then are banished. They will not return to hand if they go to the banished pile another way, such as grab your sword. So Karsten likely going to go ahead and fire that off here for free and then deploy some more threats to the table. Stoy here with 4 ink can threaten Maui Hero to all next turn, so even though Frank has the ability to sing with Ariel, is still somewhat vulnerable to the 5-drop next turn.
Yeah, Protective Cub could protect Ariel, but this Grab Your Sword is not going to take down the Mickey Mouse. So Nathan is likely still going to have enough resources to pressure however Frank develops over these next couple turns, even after Grab Your Sword.
Well, one thing we have noticed over the last 24 hours is watching some of the better players play in the field. You'll notice a lot more of players not questing early, especially with the aggro decks where you would normally want them to quest early, because they're trying to essentially force their opponent to challenge them with these cheap characters, and then they just wait and then use Grab Your Sword to clear before they start questing.
Yeah, Nathan here deciding after he sees that Grab Your Sword picked up by Frank, it's safe enough to sing Friends on the Other Side with Maleficent, and then we might as well quest with the broom, because there's a good chance if you just sit on those characters and don't do anything, Frank can just take them down for free.
Yeah. We do deploy another aerial, Spectacular Singer. The musical debut does miss on this one. Karsten here thinking about going for one of those grab your swords, maybe a quest. We'll see what he wants to do. Singing grab your sword with aerial here, nice because it clears 2 of those characters. And the broom does go bye-bye. Oh, no, that is only in challenging, so the broom will go to the discard pile and 2 damage on the Mickey Mouse.
And you kind of have to uh, get your grab your swords off while they're good, because if Frank waits too long and just sits on these characters, he starts getting into the range of be prepared, where Nathan can just clear him before Frank's able to actually get any value.
Right.
So he decides to just pull the trigger, and it's time to start making moves.
Steuyer's turn. We know he has Maui here tall in hand, so he could play that and challenge the Simba, and then use the Mickey Mouse to challenge the Ariel. That'll be a reasonable trade for him. I believe that's what we're going to see happen. And then Frank's got to deal with this Maui.
Yeah, Maui's great, but I think Frank might have a great answer in Smash. Not necessarily the most efficient card, but when it can, take down your opponent's board position like this, can leave an opponent further behind than they were prepared for.
Yeah, Karsten's list, which we looked at before the match, he's notorious in Magic the Gathering for playing singletons to fill out his curve, to serve
Hmm.
as, random effects that you'll want at some point in the game, but not necessarily every single game and not necessarily in mass. And here in his Amber Steel Stitch Blitz deck, he's also gone with, very few copies of Smash, very few copies of Lantern, a bunch of singletons just kind of tossed in
Right.
there. They look random, but they're calculated.
Yeah, and Frank's got a great start here. Has been able to utilize those interactive elements, and now is in a position to quest multiple times with this Lilo and this Aladdin before Nathan's even able to play Be Prepared.
Yeah. We are hitting Ink 6, though, and Be Prepared is likely to come down next turn. That Maleficent doesn't challenge that well, but it will be able to eat the Lilo if Frank doesn't do anything about it. And Story here with a potential clear next turn. Could be bad for Frank, but I assume that we're going to quest for 5.
And one of the cards in Frank's hand is Be Our Guest, which I know you're not usually a huge fan of spending
Mm.
ink on Be Our Guest, but once you get to the point in the game where your opponent is threatening to destroy everything, it's pretty acceptable to take a turn off to kind of filter through your cards and set up to propel the game beyond that point.
Oh, I agree. The hand for Frank does have that Be Our Guest, which we can sing with Ariel, but I do like your idea of just paying the ink to play it because you don't really want to deploy another threat. I talked a little bit this morning with Frank about the matchup in the car on the way here from the hotel, and he seems to think that he should just hope they don't have Be Prepared in some spots.
Mm,
Like, I don't
okay.
know if he'll be able to beat a Be Prepared anyway, and so maybe he's planning to play another character, maybe 2 more characters this turn into it, and like will probably be disastrous for him next turn if he does.
And, Nathan's drawn a few extra cards this game. I think two Maleficent and a Friends on the other side. And the fact that he didn't play anything other than this Maleficent suggests maybe he's happy with what he has. At least he doesn't have any more card draw, which at that point there's only so many other cards Nathan could have available.
That's another reason why Nathan likely has to be prepared next turn because he didn't play like another Maui or something like a Rafiki. Didn't even deploy like another character that cost one, two, or three to be in a challenging scenario,
Exactly.
and so it basically has to be prepared or nothing. And with three cards in hand, it's be prepared.
Now I do like this pickup for Frank in Simba Protective Cub, assuming he's playing for the possibility of Nathan not having Be Prepared. He's in a great position here, able to protect against this Maleficent and maybe get some more uh, quests off. But there it goes. Usually, when you see a control player start the turn off with a quick quest from their characters on the board, Be Prepared is coming right after.
Yep. All right. Useless. Grab your swords from Frank drawn. We do have another character to play, but it's relatively weak. Here, normally is about the time you would see the Amber Steel Stitch Blitz deck deploy a Stitch Rockstar or perhaps even a whole new world. But Frank, without either of those bursts of resources, missed on one of the aerial singers, and the Be Prepared takes all the wind out of his sails. Nathan Steuer passes with no play. His hand is full of reactive elements, and we're going to go back to Frank's way.
Yeah, I liked this kind of disciplined play from Frank on the previous turn. Just inking that Captain Hook, knows it's not going to be much of a relevant threat, and would rather continue developing ink in case he needs to get to some of his more expensive cards like Stitch Rockstar, Stitch Carefree Surfer, or maybe be able to take advantage of a whole new world off the top.
Okay, looking at the top four with Be Our Guest. He did spend two on it instead of singing it because no characters in play, so that means that he'll only be able to play a four drop or smaller here. We see a Stitch Rockstar and a Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. He'll likely take the Rockstar, but it's not going to be a play this turn. Maybe he's thinking about, oh hey, you didn't play anything. It's like 99% you have a Dragonfire. Maybe I take a one drop and play it this turn. And play one, take one drop and play it this turn instead. And decides to go for the Rockstar, just the best card in the deck in the matchup, probably.
Yeah, not in a great spot here. Frank is unlikely to be able to follow it up uh, immediately, which means it's a prime target for all of Nathan's single target removal.
All right, Frank in the tank here. He has a one drop in hand that he just drew and a Stitch Rockstar, but only six ink, so he can't play both this turn and get value out of the Stitch. So he's contemplating waiting a turn to be able to draw ink and then play both. The problem is every time you play ink number seven, ink number eight, you start to get to the point where those are cards that you could have played, and then your opponent might have had to deal with
Yeah,
Dragonfire or whatever, and now they're in the inkwell because you were not greedy, but you're just like trying to wait for the most value out of all your cards.
yeah, and in these early days of Lorcana, game's only been out for a couple months. Lots of players, that's the question, how many inkables do I need in my deck? How many uninkables is too many? And the advice usually comes back, you don't want to go too much higher than maybe 16 or so. Frank's only running 13, but you see, even at lower numbers, uninkable cards can still hamper your game plan.
Right. And especially cards that are specifically geared towards one type of matchup, like Grab Your Sword. Grab Your Sword usually great against the opposing aggressive strategies. Nathan Sawyer's Ruby Amethyst deck is somewhat insulated from it. Most of the characters are pretty big and just big baddies. And unfortunately for Karsten, though, drawing that Grab Your Sword number two this late in the game is a little rough.
Yeah, Frank did draw a whole new world though, so now he has some decisions to make over these next couple turns. How much of his hand can he dump onto the table before playing a whole new world to create, maximum advantage for him over Nathan's larger hand at this point?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the Magic Mirror also with the friends on the other side means that Carson likely going to be in some trouble if he doesn't do something. And looks like we're going to ink one of our two playables, and then we're going to go ahead and wheel. We're just going to start over. You have Magic Mirror.
I think this is 6 for a Rockstar actually.
Okay, so I guess we're waiting to. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't envy Frank here taking his time on this decision. I do think I would lean toward the Rockstar because most likely Nathan is going to spend most of his turn playing an answer to deal with it.
Right.
Whereas if you, you know, give Nathan a turn off, even give him 7 fresh ones with a whole new world right away, Nathan's going to be able to develop to the board first, take the turn off. Whereas here, we're just going to see Nathan likely spend a lot of ink on drawing this card and maybe even a Dragonfire.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And now we're basically in the same position we were last turn, except you have one extra ink. So I
Right.
like it. And Frank here likes it too. We're gonna go turn. We're gonna play a Lila for 1 ink, and then we're gonna wheel. Let's get a whole new world on screen. We saw this card a ton yesterday. This is a 5 cost song from Steel. Both players discard their hand and then draw 7 cards. We're normally singing this off of one of our shift characters or off of the Aerial Spectacular Singer. In this instance, we are paying full retail, 5 ink, and Frank is essentially resetting resources while slightly behind on ink, but was way behind on cards in hand. Steuer discarding 5 or 6 there and drawing 7, only +2 or +1, and Frank discarding 1 and drawing 7 is like a +6.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Nathan communicated as he discarded those cards. There's a be prepared in here. There's multiple Dragonfires, and Frank loves to see that. It just makes it that much less likely that Nathan's going to have efficient answers for Frank's threats after this whole new world. That was a pretty good spot. Whole new world is all about timing, and Frank was able to line it up well.
Yeah, I mean, the Ruby Amethyst draw, I mean, you saw what he was discarding. It was uninkables and it was interaction. And
Right.
that's exactly the type of time where you want to cast a whole new world. Either singing it or hard casting it is when your opponent has so many cards in hand and they play nothing, right? We had
Yeah.
multiple turns past where Nathan Steuer had 5 or 6 ink at the ready and just deployed no characters and didn't really do much with his ink.
And if Frank hadn't found that whole new world, any other draws he had were not beating that hand from
Right,
Nathan.
exactly. Whole New World is one of the few cards in the situation that can give Frank enough resources to compete, whereas before Nathan had a whole stranglehold on the game, but that's one of the reasons why Whole New World is one of the best cards in the game. All right, Steuer in the tank, fresh 7, and then +1 from the draw step. Can deploy some characters, maybe has a sweeper, like Be Prepared to clear these 2 characters, but I don't think it's that necessary to play a Be Prepared at the moment. I'd much rather get down maybe like a queen or something that can challenge, but also if you don't pressure me, I'm gonna draw some cards.
Exactly. Especially knowing Frank has, what, 6 cards in hand at this point.
Right.
Uh, you would ideally like to wait on the next Be Prepared. Uh, Looks like Nathan does have it. So just trying to figure out the best way to get down some counter pressure and make Frank think twice about questing.
These are untimed matches. We like to make sure the players get to finish their match. Nathan in the tank, trying to figure out what to do. Can deploy some preemptive checks for the characters in case they quest. Or can maybe play something like Maleficent Monstrous Dragon. Not super effective against these cheap characters, but still, large body, takes care of 1 and prevents some lore generation. Frank is at 8 lore and could get up to 20 sneakily with a bunch of cheap characters, but we have 10 ink being played. Looks like a Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor and a broom, magic broom. So the magic broom's going to shuffle something back in, maybe a Be Prepared, maybe a big finisher, maybe a Dragonfire. And we'll see what Nathan wants to do.
A little surprised to see this Brave Little Tailor come down instead of the Aladdin. Aladdin is, that's a card that just says stop against our aggro decks,
Yeah.
right? Mickey, the I guess the benefit of Mickey here, if you don't care that much about lore, Mickey is going to be able to pick off Nathan's best choice of characters over the next few turns. Whereas Aladdin, it'll take down one character, get that lore boost, but after that point, Frank can just use whatever the most efficient trade is, as opposed to Mickey, which Nathan can kind of use evasive defensively to, like I said, get the best choice of character off of Frank's board.
All right. The Brave Little Tailor also threatening, right? It does quest for 4, and so what that also does is it puts a clock on Frank, and it makes him more likely to overextend onto the board to
Mm-hmm.
race or to challenge, and that might help Nathan just kind of walk the dog and put Frank in a spot where he has to play out most of his hand to race the Brave Little Tailor, and then he just loses to the Be Prepared #2.
Yeah, we're definitely at the point in the game where Ruby Amethyst decks can start putting you in that squeeze. Follow up for Frank here. Stitch Carefree Surfer draws a couple cards, puts a pretty big body into play.
Oh yeah. Big chonker. We saw a ton of Carefree Surfer yesterday and the day before. That 4/8 body. Let's get it on the screen. I think it's probably the card of the tournament.
Yes.
We had two Ruby Amethyst decks go 3-0 in the first pod, and so we didn't actually get to see them a ton, but we did get to see a lot of Amber strategies deploying Stitch Carefree Surfer, often alongside something like Lantern or One Jump Ahead that would help accelerate to it. But this powerful 7-drop with 8 willpower allows you to draw 2 cards if you control 2 or more creatures or characters when it enters play, and it's very difficult to beat in a challenge or with direct damage thanks to such a high willpower. 8 is enormous. We've seen Ursula be one of the more
Yeah.
powerful finishers out of the Ruby Amethyst strategies, and it's often because it has 8 willpower, even though it only has 2 strength.
Exactly. Now, Frank just thumbed through Nathan's discard pile there and actually caught a glimpse. There are 3 copies of Be Prepared, so 2 of those were discarded off that whole new world.
Whew.
Meaning, while Nathan does have this a Be Prepared in hand, that's going to be the last one unless he gets some brooms down afterward. So Frank can extend this game just a little bit, have enough resources to continue pressuring after the first Wrath. Frank could be in a position to get something done against Nathan. And we saw some questing for Frank there. He knows those characters are going to get challenged. There's no bodyguards in play or anything like that. But once you get to 10 lore with as much lore as Frank has in his deck, he can start trying to, just get 1 or 2 lore out of every character and try to push past the finish line.
All right, so Nathan going to try to turn the corner here. We're going to get aggressive. We're going to play a Rafiki to challenge so that we can quest with our Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor. We're going to go Broomstick into the Leela, and we're going to go Rafiki into the Prince Eric, and then we're going to quest. And essentially what that's going to do is it's going to put Frank in a spot where he has something that only quests for 1, and he's very short of winning the game here. And Steuer here with a commanding board presence, some backup in hand with a Be Prepared in case things go horribly wrong, and a Magic Mirror to refuel Frank on the ropes.
Yeah, and the whole new world only put Nathan up 2, maybe 3 cards as opposed to Frank's 7. But then you're still looking at a Ruby Amethyst player with 7 cards in hand, right?
Right, and a boatload of ink.
Yeah.
All right, Frank here. Going to start deploying some characters. Looks like we're going to start off with an Aerial Spectacular Singer. Maybe we could set it up so Spectacular Singer gets to sing a whole new world for free next turn, and continuously deploying a bunch of cheap threats to make Steuer continuously check them.
Yeah, Frank deciding not to take that whole new world, though. We are at the point in the game where Nathan has enough ink that if he chooses to, he can just play, most of the cards in his hand, and both players throughout this part of the game are going to be maybe lower on cards, and Frank's not going to be able to get as large of an advantage. But I also, I don't know if Frank has a Grab Your Sword, but it's pretty good here, able to stifle most of the, defensive pressure that Nathan has.
May want to wait on it till next turn. It looks like we're going to start off with Singing and Be Our Guest with the Prince Eric. This does leave it prone to being challenged, but to me that signifies that he is going to be casting the Grab Your Sword this turn to kill the small things, and then if Eric wants to get challenged, it's going to require -4 lore because Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor is going to have to do it.
Yeah.
We find a Lilo making a wish. I believe we can still go Ink Lilo plus Grab Your Sword. Something to that effect.
And Lilo is really kind of the card Frank is probably looking for on a turn like this. Spending that ink and the song on, Ariel and Be Our Guest kind of puts you behind on tempo. So if Frank wants to keep up any amount of pressure, it's going to require some cheaper cards like Lilo and this extra Captain Hook here.
Okay, prime spot for Steuer to play this Be Prepared and take the wind out of Frank's sails. I expect him to play it right after questing for 4 with a Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor. 4 characters on Frank's side, and 1 which can sing a song next turn means that Steuer's hand needs to be spent, or he needs to check what's in play. And I think his hand is pretty gummed up with expensive things.
And this is, Grab Your Sword has looked pretty good this game for Frank. It's cleared a lot of Nathan's characters that are threatening to pressure Frank as he's questing, but you still get put in this awkward spot where you go, aha, one-sided board wipe, and then if your opponent has no characters, their be prepared is pretty much a one-sided board wipe as well.
Yeah. Hey, the Steuer, former world champion of Magic the Gathering, also starting a brand new podcast called Bolt the Bird with his buddy Cody DeBoss. We had DeBoss here at the Apex Gaming
Mm-hmm.
Center a few weeks ago for one of our Magic events. Nice guy, and highly recommend checking out the podcast Bolt the Bird when you can. We love Nathan here. He's a wonderful player and a wonderful human being. I got to hang out with him last night and his significant other. She's great.
I love this from Nathan. He's looking at the scoreboard. This Mickey's going to put him up to 10. The brave little tailor not able to be challenged by any of Frank's characters and decides Frank's not going to be winning the game this turn, so I can put him in a terrible position basically by adding on the pressure. And Frank able to quest for 5 if he quested with everything, but then all of those characters are going to be vulnerable to Aladdin, meaning Frank is just going to be that much further from the finish line, and Nathan could really get through here.
Okay, well, we're gonna hardcast grab your sword, and then we're gonna sing a whole new world. We're gonna deal 2 to everything, and now Frank gonna go digging. Draw 7. Nathan discarded a lot, including the 4th copy of Be Prepared, so no more access to the sweepers for him. He's gonna have to win the hard way, aka by questing, instead of just by your opponent tapping out.
And the card you're looking for when you make this play from Frank is pretty specifically, maybe another copy of Grab Your Sword, but also Tinkerbell Giant Fairy,
Right.
because that 1 extra damage is what you need to take down this Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor that's threatening to push Nathan towards a win faster than Frank can.
Yeah, I don't see it over there in his hand, so
Yeah.
we'll see what Frank wants to do. We can quest for a little bit. We can choose not to. Right now, that Aligned Heroic Outlaw is staring at the aerial and thinking, hey, that's a pretty juicy target for attacking. I'm going to probably challenge that next turn and steal 2 lore. That coupled with the Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor threatens lethal here in just a few turns. We got to be careful if you're Frank. Got to find some way to fight back.
Yeah, looking pretty dicey though.
Well,
Frank
we have
also
a Maximus. Maybe Maximus is the answer.
is Maximus the answer though?
Man, what do you want from me?
Still only got 5 willpower.
That's true.
Usually you're kind of happy enough to get 1 good challenge out of Aladdin, and then your opponent can usually respond by challenging back.
Mm-hmm. All right, Frank here deciding what to ink or deciding what to play. I think he's about to play Maximus. Maximus. Nope. Ink Tinkerbell. Tiny Tactician.
Well, that gives us 5.
All right. Look. Black sleeves on black playmat, okay?
Yeah. Very much so.
Okay. Here it is. Stitch Rockstar, full price. And quests for 1, 2, 3, up to 14, and now Steuer here. This is essentially a distraction. This is a smoke bomb.
Yeah.
Carson's like, okay, I'm gonna just quest a bunch. I'm gonna threaten lethal because I'm in trouble, right? The Aladdin obviously gonna make that not really a thing anymore, but it's maybe gonna incentivize the Brave Little Tailor also challenging. The Mickey Mouse gonna eat something as well. Steuer has the ability to check most of what's in play, but also still gripful thanks to the whole new world, and I see an Elsa Spirit of Winter peeking out.
Yeah, Elsa is absolutely perfect here. It's kind of a stalling card, and a lot of the time we see it, as a 1-2 punch followed up by a Be Prepared. But in this case, it's just going to be a 1-2 punch followed up by winning the game.
Yeah. We can quest for 4 with the Brave Little Tailor, gain 2 from the Heroic Outlaw Challenge, and gain 2 from the Mickey Mouse Ore Challenge. So we have the ability to gain 8 should we want it, but I think we'll probably gain 6 and then use the Mickey Mouse to eat the Lilo Making a Wish, and the Heroic Outlaw to eat the Aerial. We do have the Spirit of Winter, which can exert the Stitch Rockstar, and that could allow for Nathan to challenge that, but I think we're just concerned with winning the game.
A consideration for Nathan here, a lot of the time in Lorcana you want to count out your ink, figure out what you're going to be doing, and then if you have any extra ink, you can spend that on card draw effects like this mirror or friends on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And the best possible draw for Nathan here, if he does decide to play that card, is Shield of Virtue. would let
Ooh.
Nathan win the game on the spot by readying Aladdin Heroic Outlaw. But, Nathan's also in a pretty commanding position. I would not be surprised if he just decides to put himself in an unlosable board state.
Yeah, you have to find the spot where your opponent can't possibly come back.
Right.
If it exists, you shoot for that. If it doesn't exist, you get as close to it as possible. You constrict their outs the best you can, and that usually means getting rid of Stitch Rockstar because it does cycle a bunch of cards. But with all those characters entering play exerted, I'm not super afraid of them having a challenger effect or anything like that. But another grab your sword could be the thing that really knocks Nathan off his high horse here.
And the story of this game really, Frank was able to, get down some early pressure. That was answered by a be prepared as expected. And then Frank got down a pretty good whole new world, right? Against maybe 5 cards from Nathan. Frank will be discarding 1. But whole new worlds against Ruby Amethyst really only puts you at parity or worse. And their deck is just packed full of answers.
All right, so looks like we're going to keep Ariel and Stitch exerted, freezing them for a turn with the Spirit of Winter. Let's get Spirit of Winter on the screen because this version of Elsa is quite strong. It's the primary interactive piece in the late game for the Ruby Amethyst deck because it exerts your opponent's stuff, keeps it frozen so you can potentially win with questing, but it also makes the characters prone to being challenged. Here we go. Nathan's going to start breaking down Karsten's side of the board, ensuring that Frank can't win the game next turn. And then we're going to try to set up a 2-turn kill as Nathan Steuer with that brave little Taylor. Let's see how he does it.
Yeah, Nathan kind of has a lot to think about here, but at the end of the day, most of his plays are going to be pretty unanswerable by Frank, especially Elsa able to tap down the Rockstar. One of the ways Frank can come back from spots like this usually involves singing one of those 5-cost songs, but Elsa is pretty good at preventing that.
All right, Nathan going to attack the Lilo for one, or with the Heroic Outlaw. Oh, and we're going to go questing. Okay. Interesting.
And even that whole new world, uh, Nathan has 4 copies of Be Prepared in his discard. Has only cast 1 this game, but like I said, you put yourself at parity after that whole new world. Ruby Amethyst has so much more ink, so much more interaction. Nathan only needed to cast 1 Be Prepared to win the game against this aggro deck.
Right, and it was a good one when it came down.
Yeah.
Now, Frank here, kind of in an impossible position, right? The
Yeah.
Elsa at the ready with so much willpower, uh, with Nathan at 18 means that he has to find a way to kill this turn or has to be able to knock off the 6 willpower Ariel at ready. And that's just not something his deck's that capable of doing,
Yep.
or at least not capable of doing it easily, especially with so many grab your sword already played. So we are going to be shuffling up here for game number 2. And as these players are getting ready, I would like to take a moment and say thank you to our sponsors here at the Lost Boys Lorcana Invitational. I'm Tanny. This is Bomat of the Lost Boys. You can check us out on social medias. Our handle is Lost Boys LOR. We're on Twitter, Patreon, and YouTube. We make Lorcana content for competitive players geared towards that. We worked a lot on the Ruby Amethyst strategy as well as the Amber Steel Stitch Blitz deck that you see multiple players playing in our top 8. I'd also want to say thank you to our flagship sponsor, TCGplayer.com. That's your one-stop shop for all things TCG related for singles. Make sure to check out TCGplayer.com for your Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Magic Gathering, and now Disney's Lorcana singles. Also, make sure to check out TCG Player Infinite. That side of things is where they post all of their written content for strategy and information for upcoming events. We have 2 other sponsors that I'd like to say thank you to. First, I would like to say Ultimate Guard has some of the best TCG player products in the business. The sleeves and deck boxes and stuff that they sell are excellent, and you can get them at your local game store. I highly recommend those Katana sleeves, as well as the Archive Giant Deck Box to hold your Cube or Commander decks. Make sure to check out Ultimate Guard products and ask your local game store for those, and if they don't have them, ask them why. Also, our last sponsor that I'd like to say thank you to is Cards and Castles 2. Cards and Castles 2 is a really sweet card battler that uses tactics strategy. Those hex placements where you can put down cards that you draw off the top of the deck that represent characters. It's actually a ton of fun. We'll be showing some tutorial style gameplay in the client later, and you can get it for free on Steam right now. We're going to link it in the Twitch chat for you, but you can get it for free on Steam right now. It's in the free to play early access, and if you use code Apex Gaming, you can get 5 free booster packs. That's Card and Castles 2. All right, players here are about done shuffling up. Hopefully they'll start game number 2 shortly. These games can go quite long, but while we are waiting on them, let's take a look at some of the player slides. Mr. Frank Karsten, member of the Magic Hall of Fame. What do you know about Frank?
Frank's been, one of the more iconic members of the Magic community for a long time, not just as a player, but as a content creator. Created some kind of iconic articles about math as it applies to Magic and used them to develop the quote unquote perfect mana base for all sorts of combinations
Yes.
of cards to the point that they're referenced all the time, even by pro players. You want to add a card to your deck. What's the Karsten math on that?
Yeah, most of the time they tag him. They're like, "Hey, how do I build this mana base?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "I'll get back to you in 3 days."
Yeah.
And the dawn of the third day, he has a singleton Rogren Triome, and
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know. All right, so he also has a PhD in math of probability theory and game theory. He's been a long-time writer for Channel Fireball, but has recently started working with Wizards of the Coast, TCG Player, and Ultimate Guard. Fun facts: favorite Disney movie is The Lion King. He is a world traveler. Has visited over 60 countries. That's impressive. I think I've been to 5, 6. Let's see. Hold on, let me count. Japan, Italy, Spain, United States, Canada, Mexico. I think it's just 6.
6.
All right.
So yeah,
6
60 is a lot, but you also maybe have to get
England.
out more.
7 or UK.
Yeah,
The United Kingdom.
that's plenty.
Huh? What?
Director Dan here
Look,
giving Todd grief for counting United States
I
as
just
a country.
counted the countries I've been in. I was just naming the ones I've been. I'm so sorry. All right, let's take a look at Nathan Steuyer's slide because this man has some accolades. Nathan Steuer is he was the reigning world champion. They just recently had the Magic World. He did not win back-to-back, but he was the 2022 Magic World champion. And yesterday was his birthday. We had a little birthday party for him. It was a lot of fun. Just turned 21. PT champion, back-to-back Magic Online Championship Series appearances. That's where you got to start and where I learned of him. His favorite Disney movie is Coco. He beat Reed Duke at age 13 on day 2 of a Grand Prix. That's impressive stuff. I lost to Reed Duke in the finals of a Grand Prix once. He is difficult to beat.
Yeah, and Nathan left an impression on Reed, I believe.
Wow, at that young of an age, huh?
Yeah, and then Reed goes, "Wow, this 13-year-old kid that beat me at that GP is now, making Pro Tour top 8s, winning worlds."
Yeah. All right. Well, let's head on back down to the feature match area. These players are just about ready to go, and we're going to get started with game number 2 of the quarterfinals. Frank Karsten on your left will be on the play. He did lose game number 1. We'll see if he has a turn 1 drop. He didn't play a 1 drop last game and missing out on roughly, 2 to 6 lore depending on which of the characters it could have been. And here, though, we're going to start off with a Simba, Future King. This character is a relatively new addition to a lot of the steel decks that are aggressive leaning because it allows you to loot away and discard those uninkable 5-drop songs in matchups where they're bad. But also, it's just a 1-drop for Stitch Rockstar, and if your opponent isn't challenging with early characters, well, it can quest like any other character.
Yeah, it's really doing its job here, getting in on turn 1, but like you said, discarding those uninkable songs, particularly extra copies of Whole New World, are completely redundant. You can never play 2 of those that are in your hand at the same time.
Right. So turning one of them into a real card has some value early. All right, no play for Nathan Steuer. To me, that signifies that we probably have a Rafiki because we didn't play a 1 or 2 to develop and challenge. Might not have anything. Might just have something like a Friends on the Other Side or a Maleficent Sorceress next turn. But Frank here definitely contemplating that 3-cost 3/3. Let's get Rafiki Mysterious Sage on screen because this 3-cost card out of Amethyst is one of their better defensive measures, and it's the one thing that the Simba players are always afraid of.
Yeah, Rafiki, like you said, great defensive tool, but usually comes in to, you know, start putting on the pressure with the 1 and 2 drops that you've already played. Whereas in this spot, Nathan hasn't developed anything yet. Rafiki's gonna take down the Simba, sure, but Frank's gonna be able to continue questing with everything that was behind the Simba, and really has kind of hit the ground running here against a slower start from Nathan. I don't think Rafiki is really gonna get Nathan back in, and even worse, just a really slow Maleficent.
Yeah, this is definitely not what he wants to see. So gonna want something next turn to potentially challenge maybe Mickey Mouse Wayward Sorcerer and then into a Maui like we had last game where we can potentially challenge those characters. But we did see the 1 drop from Frank this game and that protective cub coming down to protect, and now Frank looks like he's in the driver's seat, and let's see how he wants to play the next few turns. I see Be Our Guest and a Tinkerbell Giant Fairy we can place Ink, but I also see a whole new world and not a whole lot of pressure.
Yeah, Frank. Ooh, this is
I
great
lied.
play by
This is a
Frank.
lot of pressure.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man.
The only ways Nathan is going to be able to deal with this shifted Stitch Rockstar cost 5 ink, so 2 turns down the line, Frank's going to be able to get multiple quests off with this Rockstar, unless he wants to sing, of course. And this is exactly the kind of start Frank needs to kind of get in underneath, be prepared.
Yeah, and the shift mechanic on Stitch Rockstar and a lot of the more expensive and iconic Disney characters allows them to be put onto the table much earlier than their ink costs would suggest. And the shift mechanic, it kind of counts as a negative card advantage because you are essentially putting one card on top of another. That's how the shift mechanic works. But the Adoring Fans ability on Stitch Rockstar allows you to really punish your opponent, and questing for 3 kind of this early on is extremely dangerous and is going to require some serious work from Nathan Steuer to help out.
Nathan pulling a Befuddle to the front might be the best he can do here after only having a second Maleficent to follow up the first.
Yeah, but that is going to allow him to challenge the Simba Future King with the Maleficent, and we're going to go back Karsten's way. We can play some stuff out of our hand this turn, and then we can sing a whole new world. I fully expect Karsten to do that, and then flood the table with cheap characters so that he is able to pressure Nathan significantly, but also before Be Prepared is online.
And we're once again in the spot where Nathan didn't play any of those more defensive cards on turn 1 or 2 in, Archimedes, Gaston, even Magic Broom. So most of Nathan's hand pretty likely to be either card draw or interaction. So you're right that I wouldn't be super surprised to see a whole new world. But Frank may have just passed here?
No, Nathan just started to
Okay.
ready his stuff prematurely. So Frank has the ability actually to sing Grab Your Sword here as well, and if he does, it's going to clear out the Maleficents. But instead, he's going to sing A Whole New World, and we're going to wheel.
I like
Nathan
this.
discards 6 cards. Yeah, I actually liked him doing that instead of playing the Simba because the free card you get off the Simba doesn't do anything. But I think what he was doing was saying, I don't know that I need to play the Whole New World if I hit
Yeah.
4 or 5 characters in a row, like a nice little string. And the Simba protecting with Bodyguard is something you're already going to want to protect against Maui anyway.
Yeah, and the best case scenario here for Nathan is going to be one of those 5 ink removal spells. But even if he does have that, that's all he's going to be doing this turn.
Yeah, 2 Maleficent's going to trade into a Simba, but other
Yeah,
than that,
big whoop.
yeah, very happy with that if you're Karsten for sure.
Nathan, it looks like with multiple copies of Be Prepared, but that's still several turns down the line.
Yeah, right now we're about to play ink number 5, and that's going to allow for the Dragonfire on the Stitch Rockstar and clean it up. It's going to take most of his turn. I don't see any other viable play here from him, but he may decide to deploy 2 more characters to the board, and looks like maybe that is what he's wanting to do. The Rockstar is pretty devastating, over time, and with a fresh drawn 7 and some replacements already, Frank threatening to essentially win, not next turn, but maybe the turn after, and that's 1 turn sooner than Nathan can cast Be Prepared.
Yeah, we see Nathan going back and forth here, ends up deciding to cast a Maleficent, and that's kind of a hallmark of just a bad hand, right? You're trying to find the best play if you're in Nathan's spot, but what you slowly start realizing is every play I look at is a bad play because my hand just doesn't have what I need.
Okay, we're going to ink a Shield of Virtue. We're going to play a Broom, probably put back a Be Prepared or something similar. Looking at the grave, we see a Dragonfire. He already has Dragonfire in hand. I doubt he wants
Nope.
more.
I think a Dragonfire would have come down this turn. I don't think Nathan even has one. It
Sure.
was discarded out of the first Whole New World.
Ah. All right, Nathan. Try to figure out what to put back with the broom. I think the broom is a May, so he can choose just not to put anything, I think.
Yeah. It would actually be funny. Put back another copy of Whole New World.
Yeah, put back a copy of Grab Your Sword. Put something from your grave back in that's not that great. Obviously, Grab Your Sword will be good in this spot to kill the 2/2/2s, but in general in the matchup, it's uninkable. You don't want to draw too many.
Yeah. And decides not to put anything into either player's deck.
All right, let's go back Carson's way. We can quest for 3, 4, 5 up to 13. We can also play a bunch of cheap characters, and Steuer still 2 turns away from that all-powerful Be Prepared. We are going to shift another Rockstar.
This rules.
Yeah. We don't get to draw 2 cards per, but what we do get to do is quest for a ton.
Yeah, this is perfect pressure from Frank. Gets the quest right away. Knows he doesn't have to be afraid of a Be Prepared, and Nathan just doesn't have enough ink to be able to answer more than one card this turn.
All right, we'll see if he has anything here. We're at 15, and we're very close to winning. We need to kill the Aladdin and a Stitch Rockstar, and in order to do that, I think Nathan is going to need a miracle. Doesn't have it. Packs it in.
Wow.
Frank Karsten with a dominant game number 2 on the play. Had the 1-drop into 2-drop, an early draw 7, and that's all she wrote. The Ruby Amethyst deck couldn't keep up.
Hey, the best aggressive start out of Frank's deck is Lilo plus Simba, and that's actually the reason he started looking at Amber as a primary color before ending up pairing it with Steel. But maybe one of the second best aggressive starts, like we just saw there, shifting Stitch on turn 4.
Yeah, one of the players in the top 8 playing Amber Stitch Blitz is Kurt Spies, and he is playing 4 copies of Lantern
Yeah.
and 4 copies of each. Well, 4 of every Stitch possible: the New Dog, the Rockstar, and the Carefree Surfer. And with Lantern, you can often go 1-drop into Lantern into Shift Rockstar on 3. And if you're on the play and you Shift Rockstar on 3, most decks fold.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly Nathan's, 5 ink is the point where you start actually getting unconditional removal.
Yeah.
And but now Frank's on the draw, and a play like that, turn 4 shift will be answered right away by a Dragonfire a lot of the time.
All right, as these players are shuffling up here for game number 2 and resolve the mulligans, I'd like to remind everyone that we are at Apex Gaming in Caldwell, Ohio. Their home store is very large. Not only do we have like the main store area. Oh, shout out to Mr. Rogers84 for the sub. Thank you so much. Not only do we have the main area of the store with the retail side, place to sit and play Warhammer 40K, but we have a huge play space next to the main part of the store, a newly renovated warehouse area that has been turned into a gaming space, and we have seating capacity for roughly 200 or more players comfortably. I think we could probably get about 250 in the store overall, and we've had a couple of large modern events at the store already where we had about 130 players for one of them, and everyone had a great time, and we had plenty of room. And we're going to have another one of those events next weekend. We're going to have a modern $5,000 open here at the Apex Gaming home store in Caldwell, Ohio, and that's going to be on October the 28th. So make sure to head on out to the Apex Gaming home store in Caldwell on October 28th for that $5,000 modern open.
You mentioned Warhammer. Saw quite a few people out in the store today on those huge Warhammer
Oh, yeah.
tables.
You know it, baby. Those are like some old school army vets and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
that just like, man, I know I have all this knowledge in my brain about tactics, and I just need some outlet, right?
Yeah, it's cool.
I used to frequent my local game store in my teenage years, and became good friends with a lot of those guys, and it's clear that they love those types of games
For sure.
know. All right, players are resolving mulligans here and drawing their openers. Frank, it looks like with a pretty aggressive 5-card
Yeah.
mulligan looking for a 1-drop, probably tossing back things like grab your sword. We talked a little bit about his mulligan strategy in matchups like this. This is a relatively new game, and Frank is, a veteran of Magic the Gathering and has some cursory interest in Lorcana and has played a bunch of limited, but this is the bulk of his constructed play has been in this tournament. And so,
Mm.
how well he's been playing against some of these decks that he hasn't really faced off against too much, like those Amber Sapphire decks we saw earlier, but also just like the way that he thinks about games, it was he very easily grasped some of the concepts that we were talking about in the car and stuff about how to mulligan, what to dig
Yeah.
for, how to sequence, what's important. Very smart guy.
And I caught a glimpse. The two cards Frank kept in his opener were this Lilo Making a Wish and a Stitch New Dog. Uh, Lilo definitely the best start for him. So those 5 cards he threw away were looking for a Simba Protective Cub, but the fact that he kept that new dog, one of his game wins that we saw on camera yesterday was a 1-drop followed by 2 other 1-drops. So I wouldn't be surprised if he decided that might be his best backup plan, but he did find the Simba.
Yeah. Now we talked a bit in the car as well about what to do in this scenario because this is the nightmare scenario. If your opponent has Rafiki, you get blown out. And Frank Karsten here, you see him praying to Jeebus. He's
Yeah.
playing in the side event, by the way, Jeebus, the streamer. And but he's praying to Jeebus, please, 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 no Rafiki. And we'll see if Nathan has it. I don't see an uninkable 3 amethyst. I see a Maleficent sorceress, and that means Karsten likely safe here. And if that's the case, Nathan gonna be under some real pressure thanks to that Lilo making a wish.
Yeah, early in the constructed metagame, Ruby Amethyst was trying out a couple copies of Befuddle, just as an inkable card that can be good against aggro. That card got phased out, but recently has been phased back in because of its value in mirror matches. Once Ruby Amethyst mirrors get down to 0 to 1 cards in library, Befuddle lets you set up a loop. But kind of the knock-on effect of that is now Nathan does have access to 1 copy of Befuddle in situations like this to
Right.
pick up that Simba.
Yeah, Befuddle's a cool card. Let's get Befuddle on screen because this is one that we don't see a ton. Right? I think right when we started playing, people saw a 1-cost card that could interact, and they
Yeah,
thought, "Oh, this is great because it's inkable, does this thing." And then the more people played with it, they're like, "Okay, bouncing a 1 or 2 drop, not necessarily the best thing in the world. They just get to ink it, and like you
yeah,
set them back like a little bit." But like you said, with Magic Broom, you just use Befuddle on your Broom. You play Broom, you put Befuddle back in your deck, and if it's your last card, that means that you can never be decked,
hmm
unless your opponent has some way to directly knock the broomstick out.
yeah.
So
And you mentioned, it's interaction, it's inkable. That inkability is actually maybe a reason in the game engine why a card like that might be less good, where every card in your deck most of the time is worth a card. Even Befuddle, most of the time you're getting more value playing it as ink than by bouncing something,
right.
unless you're in exactly the right board state.
Yeah, those cheap situational tricks like Befuddle, they're often inkable, but sometimes they're not. And when they're not inkable, they're often unplayable. Like
Absolutely.
there's like a in the Emerald Ruby starter deck, for example, there's like multiple cards that just buff your character's strength by 1.
Yeah.
There's like Scimitar or something,
Yeah.
and they're just horrible because they're not inkable, or like some
Yeah.
of them aren't inkable, and that's really the difference between a playable and a good card is if it's a card that you often want to play and it's inkable, it's like a home run.
Right.
Gaston came down last turn for Steuer. That's going to potentially do some challenging, so Karsten doesn't even quest. And so now we just dig with Ariel Spectacular Singer. And Steuer, for his turn, plays Sorceress, draws a card, and passes back after inking number 4. Frank's got to be worried about Maui Hero to All, so he's got to be thinking, okay, how do I best play around something like that or something like Dragonfire? Do I want to sing this turn? Do I want to set up a song for next turn?
And I think the answer,
Did you see what I saw?
yeah, Todd just noticed it. There is a grab your sword in Frank's hand, and that's kind of the perfect answer to the way Nathan's been developing. We
Yeah.
do, open ourselves up after grab your sword to Maui, but that just it's a little slower. It's gonna get multiple characters for Frank.
Right, but Maui will be eating Simba, and the things that
Yeah,
have rush are often really damning when you rush down the biggest thing like Simba that's protecting everything else, and then your small characters get to pick off your opponent's small
Mm-hmm.
characters or trade with them. But in this spot, if you see grab your sword and take out all these, early characters from Steuer, that means that, the Maui, yeah, it'll eat the Simba, but you still have two characters in play. You're still questing,
Yeah.
you're still developing.
And Frank, going through some card filtering first, good sequencing. There's the grab your sword.
Ha! Ugh.
Nathan's like, you made me sit through all that, and you always had the grab your sword. Come on.
Yeah. All right, question for two.
But what Frank was looking for is the best follow up to this grab your sword. Was maybe looking for another copy of Aladdin or a Lilo. This is still good. 3 extra lore added to the board.
Yeah, this is bad news for Steuer. Still very far away from a be prepared. Finds a Rafiki that could help. Didn't have Maui, so I guess that's about as good as he can do. Unfortunately for him, his early defensive measures were all 2 willpower, and that grab your sword swept them all up. Here's the Rafiki to eat the Simba, and obviously a little bit of frustration from Steuer there because his early characters all got obliterated with that free grab your sword.
Yeah, this has just been a beautiful curve from Frank.
Right. And I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Here's a rock star. We're going to ink. We can actually sing here too. So we're going to sing and draw 7. And then we're going to quest 4,
Wow.
2, 4, 7, up to 11. And we can still play a 1-drop and draw card. Steuer here still a ways away from playing a Be Prepared. You could have a Maui or some other piece of interaction like Dragonfire next turn to stop the bleeding. But as far as keeping Frank from getting to 20, it's going to be a tall order.
If I could whistle, I would. This has been a great series of cards. There you go. And that's kind of one of the weaknesses of interaction in Lorcana at this point. Dragonfire is kind of the best you get, and when it's the best that you get, it's still pretty good, but it's not really efficient enough in a lot of spots like this. So as we see, a couple years down the line, we've got plenty of sets. I imagine Dragonfire could be phased out entirely, depending on what other cards get printed.
Right. I would love to see a lot more like situational removal that's just inkable and less expensive. I think Smash is a great example
Yeah.
of one of those types of removal spells that it doesn't even see like ubiquitous play in the steel decks. It's often
Right.
like a 1 or a 2 of, but that 1 or a 2 of gives you a lot of flexibility in spots where you're trying to combine the extra damage with Grab Your Sword. All right, Karsten here can actually sing another Grab Your Sword to knock off the Rafiki. Is that worth, you think, the 3 lore he'd be missing? I kind of think just the 3 lore is just so important here.
Yeah. If Nathan's going to get back into this game, it's almost certainly going to require a be prepared a couple turns from now. Frank could also consider maybe thinking about challenging this Rafiki.
Well,
There's a grab your sword.
yeah, he's gonna sing it instead of challenging. That way he's not vulnerable to another Rafiki, and his hand is probably just flush, right? So it makes sense. I liked questing for 3 a bit more, but I feel like Frank is trying to play around something that I'm probably not thinking about, and I'll probably try to ask him after the match, actually.
So I guess if you counted out, questing with that with that stitch would have put Frank at 11 lore, and then the Rafiki answers a Lilo, and likely a Dragonfire or a Maui answers the Stitch, and then that's only 4 lore in play for Frank, putting him up to 15 on the following turn, and then getting answered by a Be Prepared. In this spot, though, he's only at 8 right now, but Nathan can only play 1 answer, which is going to leave Frank with 6 lore in play, and maybe able to add a follow up.
Steuer starts the turn with friends on the other side, doesn't choose to interact, digging.
That's game over. Right? Like, I mean, not game over, but Frank has been playing around a 5 ink interactive spell, and Nathan didn't even have that.
Right. Well, he knows that he's going to lose if he doesn't have Be Prepared. I don't think he had Be Prepared either, but he found one off of Friends on the other side, so he's
Yeah.
trying to set up for next turn. But he's also trying to see, do I want to play anything this turn? On top of that, he's obviously in a spot where it's Be Prepared or Bust. And Karsten here going to put him in the squeeze. Unlikely to deploy too much more next turn that can get swept up in the Be Prepared. Another draw 2 makes sense. Not only is he going to have to be prepared next turn, but Frank's going to be threatening lethal almost every turn for the rest of the game after that.
Exactly.
But we do know that Ruby Amethyst is quite good at preventing your opponent from closing out the game sometimes, especially if they do get that be prepared off in the right spot. But Frank here with a grip full and unlikely to deploy too much here. Maybe goes for a Carefree Surfer if he has the ink for it. Can't quite tell how much he has because it just draws two. Um,
Yeah, Carefree Surfer would be kind of the best follow up. It's still some additional pressure, but uh, draws two cards. Wouldn't be surprised to see absolutely nothing else, maybe. But Frank, not enough ink to play the Surfer, I don't think.
Okay. So uh, we'll see what he wants to play for ink this turn if he wants to ink anything. He has a BR guest, I think, on the far left that he could play for ink so that he's able to better set up for the following turn post sweeper. Excuse me, that was an aerial spectacular singer, I think.
And we're about to get into the next phase of the game, right?
Yeah,
The play pattern is going to be Frank presenting threats and then Nathan being forced to answer them.
right. I think the Carefree Server is actually a fine play here if he can play it, simply because it's unlikely to draw two cards ever again.
Yeah.
And I would actually rather turn that 7-drop Stitch into two 1-drops that can quest and just require direct answers. But I don't think I think he only has. I think this is number 6 for the turn anyway. So
Yeah.
Steuer here on the play for this game, and now we are gonna play a Be Prepared. Sweep him up. Frank saw it coming. It was telegraphed, and now we're gonna go back his way and see if he can continuously present lethal turn after turn, and if Nathan can check it.
Yeah. Looking pretty good for Frank here. You're not as embarrassed to be following up with an aerial at this point in the game because it's going to be joined by a couple other characters, and that's really all you need. So spending that extra ink to get some card filtering is pretty good.
All right, start with a spectacular singer. Musical debut. Looks at the top 4, and we're gonna look for a song. Looks like we miss. We're gonna put him on bottom. Can play at least one more character here. Let's see if he wants to play 2 more characters so they can quest for up to 3. And let's see if Nathan has the check. I think I see another Be Prepared sitting over there. So it'll be interesting to see. Do you play around the sweeper or do you play around the targeted removal?
Yeah,
Okay.
Frank is going to have to kind of meter out these threats. He's planning the next couple turns ahead in his mind. What's going to line up best against every answer Nathan could have?
All right. Host of Bolt the Bird podcast and former world champion of Magic the Gathering, Nathan Steuer, looking over his hand, trying to figure out how to stop Frank from gaining 3 lore. We know the Ruby Amethyst deck has many tools to do exactly that, from the Spirit of Winter Elsa to Be Prepared, a lot of target removal. We'll see how he wants to deal with this, but ready characters can be difficult for any deck to stop from questing on
Yeah.
the following turn. That's the nature of the game engine, and what makes it so imperative that you interact early because things can spiral out of control so quickly.
The best possible for Nathan in a spot like this, I think, is Elsa Spirit of Winter. That 1-2 punch, Elsa followed up by a Be Prepared next turn, kind of forces Frank to continue developing into this, because the characters are now vulnerable. The Elsa and any rush characters can start chewing them down,
Mm-hmm.
and Nathan has the setup.
Well, Frank does draw Simba Protective Cub, so if he doesn't want to overextend into a sweeper, he can play just a Protective Cub exerted, and that might be his play and only play for the turn. Instead, we're going to go for, looks like a Stitch Rockstar and then a Protective Cub, and we're going to draw cards. So we're going to deploy 1 extra threat, and that's going to walk right into this Sung Be Prepared from Nathan Steuer. He's going ready real fast here. Let's see how he wants to sequence this turn, but we can start by singing this Be Prepared, I think. Ooh, maybe he doesn't have it. I thought he had one.
And you were saying this is part of Frank's strategy, right? Past a certain point in the game, you kind of just have to hope they don't have it and maybe present the best possible play against the other answers Nathan might have.
Right. Yeah, Elsa puts you in a bind because if you don't redeploy, the Elsa usually gets to eat a character, and then they can play a Dragonfire or something else on one of the other characters.
Yeah.
So it just puts him in a tough spot. But if he has the Be Prepared to sing it this turn, he'll be in great shape. If he doesn't have Be Prepared, he's going to need a lot of help.
And the nice thing about the Elsa is if Nathan doesn't have Be Prepared yet, he has plenty of ink to spend on card draw while leaving the Elsa up to sing at the last possible moment. But that's reliant on finding it at all.
Now he's trying to figure out, does Dragonfire save me? He can Dragonfire the Stitch Rockstar, and he can challenge the Simba, but he's going to need another rush character or another removal spell to do that. He's maybe thinking about going Broom Shuffle and a Be Prepared, draw a card with Magic Mirror to look for it, and then sing it with Elsa. But even then, that's going to leave him with nothing on the table, and then
Yeah,
Frank just gets to redeploy again next turn and has a reasonable amount of cards in hand. So let's see how Nathan wants to play this. It seems like he does not have the Be Prepared. That would make things relatively easy, and so now things are about to get really hard.
yeah. We Frank over here on the left has put his hand on the table with that die on top, both to represent how many cards and to keep it separate from his inkwell. Uh, that's some body language. It's if you have it, you have it.
Yeah. All right, Nathan going to shuffle in and Be Prepared, and then we're going to play Magic Mirror. That means we're going to draw a card. This is Desperation, Be Prepared, draw.
Yeah,
Frank,
rubbing his hands together.
come on, Frank. Don't cut him to it, buddy. Frank was sweating this match all night. You know what? I don't blame him because Nathan Steuer is one heck of an opponent. Former world champion of Magic the Gathering on the ropes, about to have one draw step to find Be Prepared. If he finds it, he can sing it with Elsa Spirit of Winter. If he finds it, he might be in the game. If he doesn't find it, he's dead.
Frank looks like he's at a
Ha!
roulette wheel.
Ha! Oh,
Oh!
doesn't have it. Nathan Steuer defeated Frank Karsten,
Wow.
Hall of Famer, Magic the Gathering. Wins 2-1 against Nathan Steuer, our favorite and first seed going into the top 8.
Yeah, it was amazing. Thanks for the dramatic finish from Nathan there.
Yes, yes. Well, after an excellent start in games 2 and 3, Frank able to, really ride those great draws to victory. The Grab Your Sword sung with Ariel on 4, just completely shattering all of Nathan's position that he had developed with Broom, Maleficent Sorceress, and Gaston, and then ultimately just could not quite find the answers. Had the one Be Prepared that was relatively telegraphed, but the second one didn't come, and Amber Stitch Blitz once again defeats Ruby Amethyst Control, and Frank Karsten advances to the semifinals.